You don't need 10,000 followers on LinkedIn to be successful, especially in B2B sales. You need like 10 or 12 good clients. One of the coolest ways, especially if you're in B2B and you have the time and it's going to be a big sale for you, is give away 5 free ideas. Nobody rejects a free gift. You got to really work on yourself if you want a long career in sales to keep score by something other than individual rejections.
How should we really as leaders understand if our team are silently being burned out?
Man, there's so much to unpack. We could do a whole nother episode on this. So
Hey Mike, how's it going, my friend?
not too bad. I always love chatting with another Mike. They're good people.
Exactly. Good to have you on the show. Look, before we kickstart, we want to get to know you a little bit better. So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you end up in sales? What are you working on these days? And we'll take it from there.
Yeah, first, if anybody's watching the video, we should talk about my actual background, because normally the shelf is full of all kinds of things in my background. I was a radio DJ on 105.1 Jack FM in my 20s, and that got me into internet marketing and stuff and social media. And then my dad was a Sandler sales trainer from the time I was in high school on. So I took my first professional sales class when I was 15 years old, 30 years ago. And I didn't have anything to sell, but I loved the sales and the psychology around it. And I ended up in my career working for Sandler for 15 years, 5 with my dad, and then 10 at the corporate office. And in the last 9 years, I rewrote the sales program for Sandler internationally, which is, taken by over 50,000 people every year and stuff. So that was super fun. I hosted the How to Succeed podcast for 9 years, where, that was downloaded over 3.5 million times by salespeople. I've spoke at HubSpot Inbound. I helped Uber redo their sales pitch during the pandemic when nobody was driving anywhere and they had to pivot to sell Uber for Business and Uber Eats. And I've had a really cool sales career. My last position with Sandler was the head of franchise strategy. So we had over 200 locations, and I was in charge of the coaching team that coached our other 400 coaches in sales. And it got very meta when you're trying to sell people who are selling people about selling people. It gets really interesting. So we can go as deep into sales as you want to go today.
I love it, man. I love it. You have such an interesting career, but you skipped a very important part of it. And guess which part?
That's the part that my background is empty today because I'm moving to Boston next week.
That's very important. But, there's something even more interesting. You played some serious music.
Well, that's true. Now, most of it is DJ. I did actually skip 2 interesting parts. One, I got to open for Billy Idol and Frankie Valli, which it was 20 years ago now, and they were old at the time. 6 months ago, I left Sandler to start my own company, Avenue 9, where I help people figure out AI for their marketing strategy and engage their audiences and stuff. So obviously I'm selling my own wares now, and it's fun to finally practice what I preach and go out and be an entrepreneur and sell something.
That's awesome, man. So let's talk about that. Like, you've been in sales for a very long time, from selling to coaching the coach to helping Sandler expand. Why the shift? Why marketing?
Well, that's a great question. I think I've always been torn in my career, and this won't be a surprise to anybody that's actually in sales and listening to this podcast, but my dad was a career salesman. I come from a long line of salespeople. I didn't want to be in sales. What has happened over my career is shifting between the dynamics of what I find interesting. So for me, the audience building led nice into social media and social selling. And I wrote a book for LinkedIn called LinkedIn, the Sandler Way. And that did very well. And that got me the job at the Sandler corporate office. And so that was taking my social media powers and focusing them into a sales arena. And like, how can we use the same thing I do to get somebody's attention, to engage the audience, to start conversations or get them to take actions in marketing, became more relevant to individual salespeople. And it turns out throughout my career, now marketing is more about the sales skills than the audience building. And with AI tools and the fractured nature of media, it's not like any of us are buying Super Bowl commercials or advertising on the 3 network channels. Marketing now is a one-to-one engagement activity. We have to go do hand-to-hand combat, which is a sales skill. And salespeople have to build consensus and buying teams and talk to multiple people and stuff. And so I ended up just kind of seeing them as 2 sides of the same coin. And I find it all fascinating about how we connect with somebody, get attention, build trust with them, start interesting conversations, and then all the stuff that comes out of the human psychology from both the sales and marketing side.
I love it. I love it. And there's always, again, it's a love and hate relationship between marketing and sales, and we all know it. And it sounds like, again, you're more gravitated towards marketing than sales. But again, like, sales is still there. You gotta sell, what you're doing. Right now, you're a founder, right? And
Right.
let me ask you this then. So with marketing, you said it's a one-on-one combat. Can you give me an idea? Like, what do you mean by that? Are we looking at like content generation and dark social? And what are some of the practices that you guys do today to help basically end users or individual contributors get better at what they do?
When you and I were born, there were like 3.5 TV channels and a handful of radio stations that you could advertise on, and marketing was largely there's always been direct marketing too, but direct mail, TV, radio, that's about it. Otherwise, we had salespeople doing all the hand-to-hand combat of networking, prospecting, door-to-door selling, walking into businesses and stuff. And so that's what I think most of us think as traditional sales and marketing. And back then, there was a pretty clear split that like marketing makes the phone ring, sales answers the phone and takes it from there. Well, as we all got more sophisticated and language changes along the way here too, marketing became how you go to market, but sales also became go to market strategy, right? And so sales started doing more of the process, and we're like, oh, we should get salespeople in these conversations earlier, maybe, before the phone rings. And like I mentioned, prospecting or social networking on LinkedIn are really marketing activities done by salespeople. And then you have also post-sale stuff where marketing should probably included with the client experience and client engagement, right? And sales should be involved in that process as well. We're not just going to ink the deal and then take off and say, hey, good luck to you. We got to be involved in the handoff. And what about renewals and client activation or expansion opportunities, and who's asking for referrals and encouraging that behavior? And so I think the roles on both sides expanded into each other's territory, where it has to be alignment now. Everything is sales and everything is marketing all at the same time throughout the entire life cycle of the client. The other thing that happened is those big channels became more fractured. So cable TV comes in and you go from 4 channels to 100 channels. And then YouTube and streaming comes online and you go from 100 channels to unlimited, 1 million channels. And now with AI, there's so much stuff being created and the audiences and algorithms are so fractured that there is not necessarily a channel. When you go and open up YouTube or Netflix, you're seeing a different channel than I am. The videos that are showing up are completely different and customized for you. So now we have this challenge in marketing where our algorithm has gotten so small. We went from mass media to persona-based marketing to person-based marketing. And if we're doing person-based marketing, that really kind of requires a sales strategy. It needs understanding of their personality, their pains, their needs, their hopes and dreams of this individual person. and how can we tailor our message to that? So when I think about marketers personalizing an individual message or an individual sales pitch to an individual consumer, I don't know what you call that these days. I tend to just call it business development, but I think those roles are essentially the same. What do you think?
Let's talk about this. This is really interesting. So here's what I think. The role of SDRs, BDRs, or whatever we call them, top of a funnel.
Yeah.
Previously, if you look at like 2-3 years ago, you can still have a very nice personalized message, reach out to someone directly and book that meeting. Now, very difficult, very difficult. With all the automations and the amount of messages people receive, we tend not to trust. Like, this is the default mode. It's always been, again, with cold, outreach anyways. Sure. But right now it's even more serious. So to your point, everything should start way before. So it means the conversations that our SDRs, BDRs, or even our AEs or sellers, maybe even full cycle is a thing. It doesn't really matter. Like, our reps being on social media like LinkedIn, interacting with potential, clients or our ICP, right?
Right.
So based on what I'm seeing right now, we train our reps for certain activities, how to do prospecting, how to have a disco call, how to take, best demo calls and, take clients from one stage to another. How about taking a step back? How about social media? How to have a conversation on social media, something that is relevant to that specific medium. I've never seen anyone giving very structured training to sellers how to actually converse on LinkedIn. Is that something that you guys are working on? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on that. It's been 10 years since I wrote that LinkedIn book. But that's exactly the problem that I realized, especially 10 years ago. All of the social media books, and even ones that were called social selling, were you build this big audience, you join 50 groups, you add every possible connection, like you max out the number of connection requests you can get, and then you post every single day, sometimes 3 times a day, and you hope someday somebody buys from you. And the last chapter of every single one of those books was like, and now you engage the audience. And I'm like, that's why I was reading the book. That's what I wanted to find out, is how do you engage the audience? And it turned out, for the answer for me was, it wasn't a marketing strategy. It was a sales skill. Salespeople know how to ask questions, to observe something that's going on and respond to those sort of trigger events, and to start more interesting conversations about business than what traditional marketers were doing, because they were too focused on getting attention, making noise, trying to generate interest, and talking too much about the product and not about the person on the other end of the line. So when I'm training salespeople on LinkedIn, I just think about, what would you do in a real life networking event? And where I think most of the people make a mistake is not following their likes and not starting conversations from interactions or trigger events that happen on LinkedIn. So if you stood up at a networking event and you made what would be the equivalent of a LinkedIn post, and you said, hey, here's something cool I did this week, and somebody said, I like what you mentioned at the networking event today, would you just turn your back and walk off? Or would you start a sales conversation and say, hey, what'd you like about it? Why'd you find that one interesting? Why did that resonate with you? And those questions then start conversations with people. But think about, we're complaining as salespeople, oh, my post only got 10 likes. Did you ask any of those 10 people what they liked about your post? Reach out, send them a DM, thank them for the like. What'd you like about it? Start a conversation. Same thing when people follow your company or they post something. If somebody, every single day there's somebody posting somewhere on the internet that they have a problem that you can solve, right? And so if you were walking by somebody and they were like, man, I'm really frustrated with my, outreach strategies or something, would you just go, interesting? Or would you say, I like that, and walk off? No, you would stop them, right? And try to have a conversation. And I think that's what most salespeople are missing, is they're trying to rely on the tool and the maybe functionality of those tools that they've given you. Like, oh, I have a like, or I have a comment, or I want to get more likes and comments and followers, and they're measuring the wrong thing. You don't need 10,000 followers on LinkedIn to be successful, especially in B2B sales. You need like 10 or 12 good clients. You need, maybe 100 conversations this month. That's not a lot to be successful. So I think about getting really focused, account-based marketing, or some specific direct outreach strategies of how can I find people, find out if they're qualified or not, and start an interesting conversation with them. And then most salespeople know what to do from there. Is that fair?
I love what you're saying. You know what? Because you painted this picture. I love that. You go to a networking event, someone comes and says, I really like what you said. And like, all right.
Yeah. Thanks. And you just ignore it. Yeah.
No, this is really interesting. Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With SellMeThisPen AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at SellMeThisPen.ai. So you post something, people like it, so you took some actions, obviously. You reach out, what do you like about it? It's a conversation. Sometimes you get ignored, sometimes not. How do you make it easy for people to actually answer back? I want a tactical, example from your end. Someone comes and like my post. There's a topic, obviously. What that message should be exactly. Can you give me an example?
Sure. I think there's two things here. One is the medium, and the other is the message. So my best tip is really just to treat other people the way they treat you. And if they like a post, go like something of theirs, or if they leave a comment, respond to the comment. I think salespeople have this tendency to want to jump on it and be like, oh, let me pick up the phone and call them. They like my post. And we all try to speed it up and get married on the first date. And it's like, no, just take your time, be patient, treat people the way you would want to be treated, but also how they're responding. What I found in all of my research and work over the last 10, 15 years is that, baby boomers tend to pick up the phone. They'll call you and say, hey, I like that post. And they won't even leave a comment. They'll pick you up and call you, and you go, okay, great. And call them on the phone. Gen Xers tend to prefer email. It's fine. Like, go on their LinkedIn profile, find their contact information. They have their email listed. Send them an email and say, hey, I noticed you've been liking my post. What'd you like about it? And start that conversation. We'll talk more about the message here in a second. But when you get to millennials, they tend to prefer text messages and phone-based stuff. And then below that, Gen Z is more direct messages in the platform and stuff. And direct messages, I think, can kind of fit anybody at this point too. But what you'll see is you'll get these hints. If you're mirroring and matching what they do, is, if they call you, don't respond with a direct message, right? If they send you a text message, don't call them right away. Respond in the way that they're responding, because everybody has their own preferred way of communicating. And a lot of times you can just ask too. If it's a first conversation, say, hey, what's the easiest way to get a hold of you, Michael? Should I send you an email, shoot you a text, give you a call? What do you think? And you go, oh, you know what? I'm recording podcasts all the time. I can't ever answer the phone. So just shoot me a text. Or I see executives all the time. They're like, man, I have 5,000 unread messages. If you send me an email, I'm just not even seeing it. So you're going to have to give me a call or shoot me a text message. So I'm always looking for the channels that are open and the ones that they're responding on. And sometimes if I don't know, I'll try 2 or 3. Then when you get to that message, I really think about, how do we be human? Keep it short. We don't want to pitch slap somebody and just, offer the commercial or say, hey, buy from me right away. But how do we continue this conversation, which is generally a short subject line if you're going to do one, a message like a DM or a in-mail or an email that has a subject line: introduction, question, help. One word subject line shows that you're a human. Marketers and salespeople try to get fancy. They try to cram the whole message and into the subject line and mess it up. And we've all learned that human beings are lazy. Sometimes they don't even capitalize it. They just throw the word question. And then the message is usually what I noticed, something that's relevant to you, the trigger event. Hey, I noticed you have a job opening for a sales manager. Normally when that happens, blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's the trigger event. I saw you liked my post. I noticed you had a job opening. I saw that your company's Q4 earnings came out better than expected. Congratulations on that. Whatever the trigger event is relevant in your business, then I go straight to the pain points. Normally, again, it's something like, usually when I see that happen, that means one of three things. If you're hiring salespeople, that means you lost some salespeople, you're scaling quickly, or you've had some other sort of event like a merger and acquisition or something else along the way. Which one of those is it? And then a question. If you want to throw in a little bit of information, I'll give you one sentence about, I'm reaching out because I help people who are hiring salespeople onboard, train them, or get them up to speed faster, or install CRM systems, whatever your unique selling proposition is. I'll give you one sentence there, but you better keep it short, and it better not be a pitch. It's just like, hey, this is what I do. It might be relevant. And then the question is this relevant? Are you interested? Do you have any questions about it? Something like that to continue a conversation. And I think that usually gets the best response for me. Not 100% at all by any means, but 30 to 50% is a really great response rate. Most people doing cold outreach are getting like 1 to 3% response rates. What do you think about that? I'm sure you have your own strategies and your own effectiveness.
I really, really like what you said about knowing the channel. So it's about the person. It's not necessarily about ICP, the person. So, okay, Gen Zs prefer, for example, emails, or millennials like the text. Or this is very smart. And this is mirroring to your point. It's just like a conversation. How do you want to converse? Do you want me to give you a call, or you want to continue on LinkedIn? This is really smart. But I want to challenge what you said about reaching out to people who actually like your posts, or because this is happening to me all the time. I go and like someone's, LinkedIn post, and I know it and I feel it because we are salespeople, right? Said, hey, Michael, I saw that you like, this post, and what's interesting about it? So back in my head, I know this conversation is going to be a sales conversation. And that's why I asked you, like, what is that first message? Not to trick people, just to literally get this, a conversation going, because the trust is not there. Isn't even for me, myself. Like, I'm a seller myself, and I can smell it right away. I even see it with people with hundreds of thousands of followers. Sometimes, like, I put a comment on someone's post, and right away I see, hey, Michael, I appreciate it, man. You like my stuff. What do you like about it? I was like, I know whatever I say, you're gonna pitch, your consulting service to me.
Right.
So
That commercial is coming real quick. Yeah. I have two thoughts on this on opposite directions, and I've seen them both work. The first theory is it doesn't really matter if they see it coming. Salespeople with sales on their business card and instead of some sort of other random title, like, sell 12 to 15% more than people that put business developer, consultant, territory manager stuff, because people are like, yeah, I'm ready to buy. I want to talk to a salesperson. So what happens in those situations is, yes, 95% of those people are turned off. But the 5% who respond know that they're talking to a salesperson, they have a need, and they're more qualified. So if you're in an outbound role, like a BDR situation, you may just have to take that bullet and say, most of the people are not going to respond, and that's okay. I'm going to do this with genuine, sincere interest, and I'll give them an out and say, hey, if it's not the right time or you don't care, fine. But my job is to find people with this problem and solve this problem for them. Either you got the problem or you don't. right? And just not take that personally. And I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
The example we use at Sandler is like, if you had the cure for cancer or, during the pandemic had a cure for COVID and you didn't go ask everybody if they wanted it, you would be doing a disservice. It would be unethical. So a lot of people think it's unethical to sell somebody something they don't need. We would all agree to that. But it's also unethical to not sell somebody something that they do need,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's okay. I can be upfront and I just have to be okay with the rejection. That is not my personality. So that's not my particular strategy either. When I get somebody who's turned off and they just say, you're not going to hit me with a pitch, are you? Or they respond to some sort of snarky block, not interested or whatever. I go, I didn't ask you if you're interested in my product. I asked you a different question, which was like, are you experiencing one of these other challenges? I'll just try to not take that personally and just say, hey, that's part of the deal. If I'm doing my best, I'm reaching out to people who are not interested, because that means I'm trying hard and I'm going to hit the people that are. I'll hit this one more time because I think it's important for salespeople. I had this guy one time at a networking event stand up and brag that his business was 100% built on referrals. He had never sold anybody that did not weren't looking for his services and referred into him. I'm sorry, but I think you're not trying hard enough. There's a large portion of people out there that need your product or service, and you're doing them a disservice if you're not doing any type of sales or marketing. If you're sitting back and waiting to be 100% by referrals, you're not growing fast enough. You're not helping the amount of people you can help, and you're not doing your job and duty to your employees, yourself, and your customers to grow a little bit harder. So try some of that. And I know you're in sales, so I'm not necessarily talking to you, Michael. I'm talking to everybody else. But let's flip that around. The other strategy is I'm going to go for something more tangential. I'm going to be really patient. I'm going to build trust. And I want to make sure that they know that I'm here and what I do for when they do need me and my services. So what that typically looks like is I want to learn from them. So I'm not even going for the pitch. I go, hey, Michael, I'm looking to talk to other startup founders, CEOs that might have this problem. And I would love your help in some expert consulting, because I know you're successful in what that would look like and how I might be able to reach them better. And that's why I love podcasting, because 80% of the people I ask to be on my podcast say yes. And so then they're not going to be offended, right? If I reach out and go, hey, you're smart, give them a compliment. Can I learn from you? And they'll either say, no, I'm busy, or yeah, great. Or will you be on my podcast? You're a really credible expert in this field. They're not going to be offended and say, no, spam, right? Block your message. So I try to tend to take it more of that direction and just say, hey, I'm looking to meet some cool people and learn from you. I'm not even going to try and sell you anything unless you try and buy it from me. So how can I learn from you? How can we start a conversation? And what value is there that I can bring you or you can bring me? And totally passive, totally okay. If it's not time or you're too busy, I get it. You got your own thing going on in the world. And that's the path I usually take if I'm not on a direct BDR role. But sometimes even if I am, especially for young people, if you're just out of college 22-year-old BDR and you got to go call on presidents of a large enterprise organization to sell your software, I would take I have nothing to offer you here, but I would love to learn and I would love to listen, is a really great starting point.
I really love that. And look, you're talking about two completely different approaches, and it make a lot of sense. Like, hey, you have 95% of the market that are not ready, not educated. They don't even know maybe they have a certain problem. And I'm
Right.
all about like this hustle culture. Like some people hate it. No, but I'm in sales. I know I have to hustle. I'm running my own startup, but I have to find a way to get my leads, and I do it my own way. And we can talk about that too.
Yeah, well,
And to your point, like at least the bare minimum you can do is to observe and have a point of view and share that with the world. I've noticed something. Yes, you don't want to answer me back. Totally fine. That's not a problem. That's part of the job. We all know that. But again, outbound getting harder and trust factor again is something that we need to really pay attention to. And what I genuinely believe, you mentioned it, podcasts. Yes, I reach out to someone and say, hey, I want you on my show. It's typically yes, or look, I'm busy right now. Let's just do it in a month, but let's just stay in touch and have a conversation. And people are generally open is because it's about them. It's
Yes.
non-threatening. It's not. I'm not asking you for anything. I want to make you look good, and that's why you get into my your podcast. But to your point, if someone is just fresh out of college, 20 something years old, and said, "Hey, come on podcast," who are you? Not that I am someone running. Everybody can run a
Right.
podcast right now, right? You need the camera. You start reaching out to people, but in order to really be credible, you need to start somewhere. And I think that somewhere is the problem. Most young sellers don't know the problems they're solving for a specific person in front of them. And it's not necessarily their fault. They get to the organization and said, we have this amazing product. And you talk about it. Said, marketing historically was around product, how great the product is, what functionalities we have. And I think we still practice that one way or another. So reps don't really know about that buyer persona. And to your point, you're calling a senior leader who's super busy, get all these emails, got 200 things to take care of. You're a founder yourself right now. I'm dealing with
Yeah.
so much, and you can sense it. If you're genuine, if you even understand what I'm going through, or just like pitching me about something that is completely irrelevant.
Right.
So let's talk about Sandler.
Happy to talk about it. I did want to highlight one thing you said there, though, too, which is helping people and bringing value or perspective, because I think one of the coolest ways, especially if you're in B2B and you have the time and it's going to be a big sale for you, is give away 5 free ideas. Nobody rejects a free gift either. An invitation to be on a podcast is flattering. A free gift of like, hey, I don't know if you need it or not, but I noticed you're hiring salespeople. Here's my top 5 tips for how to hire salespeople. I hope it helps. No ask whatsoever.
Yeah.
Or just you're in startup mode. You're busy, you're crazy. I know that. Here's 5 things that founders find interesting. Those kind of stuff. I'll at least take a look at it. Right? You might not get a response, but it's an easy, no pressure way to give first, and then just don't even ask in return. Don't do the for 15 minutes of your time. I'll tell you my top 5 secrets for founders. Nobody cares. But
Exactly.
if you just give them to me, I'll take a look. Sure. No, ask about Sandler.
Before doing that, I want to just say something about what you just said, because this is really important. I think that's where companies can support those young reps better. So if you have a marketing team, if you really just break down all the signals, so one could be, completely external. Yes, they're hiring, they have a new, I don't know, CFO, or there are tons of again sources that we can use, AI just to get all this information at scale. Build relevant, again, value points that we can share with our reps to just drop and train them not to pitch, just send it out there. So you give the value, but also for ourselves, like many companies right now have PLG motions too. We do have to, right? So if I see someone is just getting a trial, literally reaching out person to person, hey, these are best practices based on vertical you're in and the way I can see you're interacting. Just take a look at this. It will help you build those, let's say, modules a little bit better. So marketing, I think, in that sense, can be very helpful to especially new reps by just giving them some valuable materials or guidelines. Now let's go back to Sandler. Look, you've been with Sandler for a very, very long time. So, many people like Sandler. Many people, might say, hey, it's old school. Some of the things are not relevant anymore. And I have a lot of friends with Sandler, by the way, so don't hate me, guys. What about Sandler is not relevant anymore? And, Sandler could do better by being more, you know, present to the current environment.
That's a great question. I think it is actually more relevant than ever. I think people that say that don't understand the psychology behind Sandler and the communication skills behind it. Um, I've seen it work with over 1 million people in 17 different languages and 30 plus countries over 30 years of my life. Now, there might be specific tactics or strategies that I think are maybe not relevant. In the 70s, there was some hard selling tactics and some different personality styles in there that were more, I don't know, just say aggressive. That maybe the language and tonality we've lightened up a lot. Also, I was part of the team that worked on rewriting the program that we used to use the submarine as the metaphor for our selling system, and now it's a circle. I can get why people in Eastern European countries don't love a U.S. submarine metaphor, so that might be a little aged and dated. And some of the stories and the materials, if you look back at David Sandler himself, has been passed away for 30 years. So if you're looking at DEI language and sensitivity training, I wouldn't look to the original David Sandler recordings. But the sales psychology they have in there is extremely powerful, and it's worked in small businesses and enterprise sales. We do the sales training for LinkedIn, Uber, Microsoft, Oracle, HubSpot, all of the huge companies that are very tech savvy, very modern, and very current in their sales processes. But the methodology and the psychology behind it, I think, stays really solid because it's one of those universal success principles. If you want to get it good at anything, the Sandler success triangles are where it's at: your attitude, behavior, and technique. And if you want to communicate well with anybody, I think the Sandler selling system of bonding and rapport, we talked about mirroring and matching, upfront contracts, being real and mutual in our consent about being sold and selling is great. Understanding why people buy, what their investment, their budget is, and whether they have decision-making authority in qualifying them. I mean, that's every single sale. That's not cheating. That's the way sales should be. And then finally, it's, that presentation, how you present doesn't matter, but you're going to propose some sort of solution at the end. And then the one thing I think everybody misses is the post-sale strategies that I think Sandler is really cool about is don't just get the check or get the signed contract and then get the hell out of there. Like, take a minute, understand buyer's remorse, understand that they have to say no to your competition or other people that proposed, or they have to fire a current incumbent vendor. And they also have to be handed off to the customer success team and set up for success going forward. And it's a great time to ask for referrals and stuff. I think all of that is pretty timeless stuff.
All right. So because it's more focused on the foundation, and look, I don't cold call anymore, to be honest. Call me lazy, call me trying not too hard. But
that's a great point.
When I do with Sandler, it still works the 30 seconds. And many people might say, oh, it's so cheesy. Still works because you get permission. And the foundation, is like getting that permission. I'm a fan of permission-based opener. Many people don't, like it or it doesn't work for them. Totally cool, totally fine. But I don't know if it was Sandler who actually came up with this, but I think it's a common practice with Sandler by getting permission, even setting up agenda during a call.
Yeah.
Disco
That's
call.
in the original No Pressure cold call script from David Sandler himself. It's about 30 years old. Way more people do it now, which means it's not quite the pattern interrupt that it was 30 years ago. And so what I would say is the language may change, but that technique does not. So if you say, did I catch you at a bad time? Can I take 30 seconds about why you called? Millions of salespeople have been trained in that line now. So it may sound more salesy than it did 30 years ago, 50 years ago. But that idea of creating a pattern interrupt, sounding different than everybody else and getting permission in some way, that's the part that I think is timeless. So yeah, my script changes over time too. And the pain points that you're throwing out there in your 30-second commercial should change every single conversation based on who you're talking to. And so I think a lot of people, that's a great point, get hung up on the tactics or the words that they're saying from Sandler. And it's not a script by any means, but that philosophy, that technique of what you're trying to do is still pretty good.
Look, I want to wrap it up on a high note. And we talk about techniques and tactics and Sandler and what's going on in the market. But look, with all these changes, obviously, people need to upskill themselves. And, burnout is something that many people are dealing with. Like, past 2 years been tough for salespeople. And if I'm not mistaken, what you found is with playful humans to reignite joy. Also, quiet quitting. And I want to talk about this. I think they're very relevant. How should we really, as leaders, look at these patterns and understand if our team are silently being burned out? Because again, as revenue leaders, it's all about go go go. Let's get the
Yeah.
numbers. So I want to get your thoughts on that too.
Man, there's so much to unpack. We could do a whole nother episode on this. So with Playful Humans, I interviewed over 200 play experts and psychologists and people that were working on burnout and quiet quitting. And I ended up writing a book on it that people can check out. It's just called Playful Humans. So is the podcast if you want to go listen to any of those episodes. And I think Sandler overlaps a lot as well, because I spent so long trying to build up salespeople, and you're preventing turnover or increasing ramp, or dealing with veteran salespeople that can get lazy, burnt out, or otherwise just fat and happy because they've had contracts for 20 years, right? There's a lot that goes on there. And then in my new role with AI and marketing, I think AI automation is another question about like what work is human and what work is best for people. I think there are probably three things that I would say here real quick. Number one is the attitude part that I said. Sales is a lot of rejection, and I think most salespeople burn out because they're repeatedly hearing no, and they're repeatedly getting hung up on, or marked as spam in their emails or whatever your outreach is, and things. And that's just going to be tough. So you got to find other ways to get your emotional needs met. And you got to kind of be the person that's maybe like the gambler, right? That keeps score by the money and is motivated by other things, and not your self-esteem, tying up your self-esteem with whether this individual person says yes or no. Got to really work on yourself if you want a long career in sales, to keep score by something other than individual rejections, right? That's tough. The second thing is what work can be automated and what work can't. I think sales is one that can't. So when you look at AI tools, how can we use AI to give us better data, to look at engagement of our employees, to maybe do those cold outreaches and automations that we don't love so that we can talk to people who are qualified? I think lead scoring is an amazing tool from AI, that if we're only talking to people who have opted in and asked to talk to a salesperson, and they got an incredible lead score and they're looking at a solution right now, your life is gravy in sales. It's really hard to get burnt out if 80% of the people you talk to set an appointment, and 80% of your appointments turn into a second appointment that turn into a proposal, and maybe 50% of your people get all the way through the funnel. Hey, life's great. You can do that for a long time. The last thing I'll say is, I think you have to discover not your own personal why, but your personal how you want to show up every day. And the what of your job can change. And sometimes the people that say focus on your why and do, follow your joy and stuff, that's just not realistic for everybody. And sometimes you got to pay the bills, or sometimes you have to find that why in a different way, of like, my why is to connect with other humans. And it doesn't matter what I'm selling. I want to have cool conversations and help people solve problems, and focus on a wider thing. Again, just like the nose or microcosms, you have to look at your wider why of what you're doing, but really think about that. How do I spend my day? Do I spend my day connecting with people, listening, solving problems? And the how, I think you can choose how you show up. I think you can choose how you spend your time and do something that gives you energy. And if it's draining you, figure out some way to outsource that, delegate, or find a different role if it's not for you. But instead of focusing on what your job title is, what the results are, or what this email says, focus on how you're spending your time. And I think that'll give you the most energy.
Yes, again, to your point, sales can teach you a lot about yourself. You might figure out that I don't want it, and that's
Yeah.
fine too. All right.
Yeah.
All right. It was a great conversation. I appreciate you again joining me, Mike. If someone wants to reach out to you, can they and how?
Yeah. Avenue9.com. Avenue9 it will also get you, my podcast on AI marketing, or you can find Mike Montague on LinkedIn. I'm the bald one. There are about 1,000 Mike Montagues, but I happen to be the best at internet marketing. So if you search for it, you'll find me, or a realtor who's a politician in Canada. I'm the one in the United States, and happy to help. Reach out, ask a question anytime, and love these conversations. It was a really cool one today, Michael. I appreciate your questions and very thoughtful take on it.
I appreciate it. All right. Until next time, I guess. Bye for now.